Well, good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's having a wonderful Saturday morning. That's right. Today is Saturday. You might have caught us yesterday and might have maybe thrown you off, a little bit because we're usually on Saturdays. But today is Saturday, and we've got an amazing guest, special guest, a great friend, a great mentor. And I'm really excited to have a conversation with him and for you to get to know him a little bit better. And I know that many of you right now are watching. You're like, hey, I know that guy. I've heard that voice. I know his show and everything. But today we're going to dive in a little bit deeper into getting to know my friend Tim a little bit better. But before we get started, guys, as usual, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart to each and every single one of you who've made this show what it is. Thank you so much always for your support. Thank you for sharing our tweets. Thank you for joining us here in this journey. And, for anybody else that you follow, please show them some love, give them some support, give them some feedback, because we are always trying to do our best to bring you the best content. So, again, I'm really excited today. And so in case you may not know who this gentleman is, his name is Tim Cavey, and I'm going to definitely give him some time to introduce himself to you, just in case you may not know who he is. Tim, how are you doing this morning?
I am so good. I've got one more admin day here at school, and then I am free for the summer. So definitely feeling that, looking forward to that. And yeah, to introduce myself, I'm an 8th grade teacher, assistant principal of a small middle school, and the host of the Teachers on Fire podcast. So in a nutshell, that's who I am, and that's what I do.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit more. Like you said, you had one more admin day. So let us know a little bit more specific as far as your role, within education.
Yeah, sure. So I'm in a smaller middle school. And so that means I still have some time in the classroom, which is actually really good for me and for the work that I do on the podcast and so on. I sort of have my foot still in the door. And students in our middle school, their last day was the 16th of June. Teachers got out on the 23rd, and admins will head out on the 28th or 29th. So that's why I've got just a little bit more office time and meeting time, planning time, hoping to make this fall the amazing comeback that we all want.
Yes. I agree with you on that. Definitely excited for coming back. And like you said, just preparing and definitely learning from our experience these past 18 months. But let's just dive in a little bit deeper as far as, who Tim Cavey is, because I definitely want our educators, our listeners, anybody that's watching to just get to know, who Tim Cavey is and what you've been through, your experiences, so that many of our audience members may relate to you, may glean something, may take some of those KV knowledge nuggets and maybe make them applicable to what they may be going through. And, it's always all about making those connections. So, Tim, what inspired you to go into education? Can you tell us that specific moment where you're like, aha, this is it. This is what I want to do?
I love listening to answers to this question. For me, it was probably right near the end of high school. And I think it was sort of a combination of working in summer camps with kids and realizing I really enjoyed working with kids. It was also things like the autonomy of being a classroom teacher and admiring certain high school teachers that I had, and, just being a fan of the organization and the planning and the creativity that we all have access to as teachers. And so heading into college and university, that was, it was really clear, I would say, right from the end of my high school experience, that was the direction I wanted to go in.
Man, that is wonderful. Now, were there any specific teachers, maybe specific mentors during that time that said like, hey, you know what, that experience that I had there really just kind of pushed you towards that?
For sure. I mean, we've all got our favorites. I like to look back to actually someone in my 8th grade, Mr. Bergen, who was, he was just one of those teachers who I got that vibe that he believed in me and he took chances on me. I was a bit of a, well, this is going to sound like I was a complete nerd. I still am. But back in 8th grade, I had this idea of publishing a class newspaper. And so we had I had access to this like really ancient word processor called Printmaster. And at the time, there were some early versions of WordPerfect. I don't know if you remember WordPerfect and a few others like that. And so anyway, I put together these class newspapers, 2 or 3 pages, different stories, some sports, some general interests, politics, and of course, what was going on in our school. And I asked Mr. Bergen if he could post those up on our bulletin board, and he said yes. And I like to tell that story because he took a chance on a kid, just publishing stuff randomly, and what would that do, and what message would it send, and would there be any problems with the content, and all, those risks that he took. And now today, here I am, whatever it is, 30 years later, doing all this content creation and publishing, and I think he was a part of that. And then I have some favorite high school teachers who influenced me for sure as well.
And well, thank you to Mr. Bergen for what he
Yeah.
did, because if it wasn't for
Shout
that, I
out.
mean, and I agree with you, Tim. I think this is something that's very important that we can talk about, is creating those experiences, and again, when a teacher believes in you and they see that potential, and more than anything, like you said, also, they were willing to take that risk. And that is something that's wonderful, that can definitely make a difference in a student's life, and just lead them in that path and spark that interest. And look at you now, like you said, 30 some years later, and you're still out publishing, you're creating content, and that's wonderful. I mean, that is just amazing. And I want to thank Omar too for joining us. Omar, my neighbor, he's always a great supporter of the show. I know he's been commenting here, and he said that he did middle school for 17 years, so he says it definitely prepares you for everything. So yeah, there you go. So welcome everybody who's joining us. Please drop us a line. Let us know where you're joining us from. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to pop them into the chat. All right. So Tim, let's talk a little bit more about about your experience now. You went in, you said, yes, I want to go into education. Now, what is one thing that you wish you knew before you started in this career that maybe nobody told you?
I've got a great answer for you, and it's Parkinson's Law. Parkinson's Law. So Parkinson's Law, the way if I'm framing it correctly, basically says that work will expand to fill the time that you give it, something like that. And so when you're starting out, you've got this bias toward perfectionism. You feel like all eyes are on you. You feel like you've got something to prove. You feel like you've got to get every last detail of your lesson planning and resources perfectly. And so as a result, especially for singles, by the way, you feel this pull to just stay at the building, stay in your classroom, or even if you do go home, continue to work and work and work. And that it's just unhealthy, and it leads to burnout in early stages of careers, I think. So, 20 years later, now what I do is a lot of my planning for the day happens that morning. And, I know that sounds stressful for some people, but for me, I love it. I get up super early, and I just give myself, a 2-hour window. I say, this is my time to get completely prepared for the day, and it's not going to expand outside of that. And then as a result, my evenings look much different than they did in year one of my career. So, so if I could go back, I would try to teach myself Parkinson's Law.
Oh no, I wish I would have known that too, as well as I can relate to everything that you've said. And even as a teacher staying there, and sometimes people kind of wear that as a badge of honor, I think.
Right.
And exhaustion does not equal productivity, and so that's one thing that really hit me during this time, these last 18 months of being able to better care for myself, and take care of those things, like you said. And myself, I'm very much like you. For my planning, I usually have an idea before I leave work and just write down some notes. But everything in the morning, I'm an early riser, just plan and let's go and let's get at it. And like you said, it really gives you that free time spend with family and just really enjoy and just really decompress, not bringing the work home, because that could definitely be very, time consuming. And more than anything, if you have kids, like you said too, you want to be there for them. You just don't want to be there physically. You definitely want to be there with them and,
Right.
doing those things. So that's some great advice. And so that's some great advice for many educators that are going to be first-time educators, first-time teachers. As you know, there probably was a lot of turnover. I don't know, how did the turnover look over there in your district as far as now, are you going to get a big number of teachers that will be coming in? Or is it, pretty much your retention rate was pretty good?
It was pretty good. There are a couple that are headed out the door for different reasons, not
Mhm.
really burnout. This year was really tough. I mean, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, it was really tough, but fortunately, I think turnover will be pretty low.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I mean, here in our demographic area and here in our area, definitely they are looking for teachers, but a lot of them, like you said, it was mainly like retirees. A lot of people, maybe, due to the situation, they say, you know what, I know I had maybe 3 years, 2 years, but, just little early retirement already, and just to just enjoy and relax. And so I think we're going to have some pretty big numbers this coming year that'll be coming in. But it's also exciting because you get some people that are just fresh, different perspectives. They're excited and eager, and so I'm really excited to work with any of our new people that'll be coming in. So that'll be great. Now, Tim, as far as your teaching experience, middle school, and then you're doing assistant principal as well, like you
Yeah.
mentioned, can you tell us a little bit of how that looks? Because we're not very familiar with that here in our area, but I'm just curious, how do you find that balance of doing the administrative and still working with the students?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging at times, and I'll give you one example. So, I was really excited coming into this position to be able to support teachers a lot and get into classrooms. I feel like I was a support to teachers in different ways in terms of developing resources and connecting them with things that they could try in their classrooms. And I led staff meetings at times and different things like that. But and of course that list is long of things that an AP does. But on the other hand, I did not get into classrooms very much. And I was just talking to another assistant principal about that this week. It's the tyranny of the urgent. You always have things to do, and when you combine the teaching responsibilities, as I was a homeroom teacher last year, and so I've got to look after 25 kids and interact with parents and provide feedback on learning and all of that stuff. And then I've got, on the AP side, I've got student discipline, unfortunately, that does fall to me to follow up with, and other planning. And so the list is really long. And so to your question, yeah, the competing worlds, the competing responsibilities are definitely tricky to balance, and sometimes it is a choice between one or the other.
Excellent. Yeah, and I can definitely see that. But what I love about you, Tim, that you do, like you said, being a content creator, is it's you bring us right along with that journey with you, and that's one thing that I really admire and I appreciate, because a lot of people may not see I don't know. I find so much value in what you put, and even in some of your posts. I know you're very active on Instagram. You're active, on Twitter, and you're continually sharing, and you're sharing your experiences. And I think that that's something that's wonderful. Like I said, for many others that aspire to someday be an administrator, even an educator, or even a content creator, just how you find that balance, and you really putting yourself out there. So, let's talk a little bit more about that now that we kind of got your context in education, and just really talk about content creativity. And I feel like, you and I really have had, we get along pretty well as far as, hanging out, and we feed off of each other, and we're always giving each other feedback. So how has, your content creativity, along with your administrative role, your teaching role, that world, where do you draw your inspiration from to place, for the content that you're creating?
Yeah, most of it comes from my work and from my current thoughts. And so I try to write out of that, and I try to repurpose the blog posts on the podcast. I try to connect with educators on the podcast or on my version of this show that I can actually learn from. So, for example, this morning I'm speaking with two middle school principals,
Yeah.
right, who are I know going to be super helpful for me just as an educator and leader. Um, Yeah, I discovered, I guess part of my journey 3 or 4 years ago, I just discovered that I was losing my fire in education. But one way to really get it back and supercharge my fire was to reflect and to create and to share ideas. And so this, just since I launched my podcast and started blogging a little more regularly, it's just completely transformed the way I look at education and my energy and my passion. So my I will say there are times when the job comes first, and I just don't have time for the content. The last 2 or 3 weeks have been pretty quiet from Mr. Cavey on the content side, and that's unfortunate because we know that consistency is really important, but sometimes it does have to take a back seat to the job. But in general, yes, whenever I can take an hour or two here or there to do some reflecting and writing about my practice, that's going to just light my fire and make me a better educator.
Oh yeah, and I agree with you, Tim. And one of the things is in kind of getting into this, live shows and podcasting. Last year, April 28th, and until now, and being able to see what you've been able to do and the help that you've provided and making those connections too as well. And I must say you are a great connector as well. And speaking of connectors, I want to give Mel a shout out because Mel is
Yes.
here. She's just popping in she probably has tennis this morning. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and Amanda too, Macias, thank you so much for joining. They're always here and very supportive. And, so thank you guys. But like I was saying, starting this last year and, bringing on guests, and it's just been amazing, just the growth that one has had. And I think the reflective piece has been something that has been very wonderful for me to help me continue to grow professionally, to help me grow personally, and just to continue to light that fire. And right now, I know that in a couple of minutes, you're going to be interviewing the guys from Unlocking the Middle. And man, those guys are amazing. I
Yeah.
love their content. And, they inspire me to want to be an administrator, even though I'm not an administrator. But it's just the things that you learn. And so I see it as a personal PD. It's a 1 hour of PD that
Totally.
I get with a subject matter expert. And so today you're my subject matter expert, so I love that we're talking about the content creation and your role and how you're able to blend that. So as far as your content, again, we talked about where you get that inspiration from, how does that help you out, but what have been some of the challenges that you have faced, as far as doing everything that you're doing, as far as the blogging, the show, of course, and then the work-life balance. Talk to us a little bit about that and the day in the life of Tim Cavey.
Well, there are a couple of different pieces there. I would say one way to answer your question is just talking about the challenges of learning the ropes. And in some ways, I like to tell people that podcasting and streaming is easy, and in some ways it is. And in other ways, it is always a learning curve. And that we're always trying to learn more and improve our craft and make this experience a little bit more professional. And so I always try to not look at where I am today, but actually look at where I want to be in 5 years, right? And I think back to episode number 1. I like to tell this story on the podcast side. At the time, I didn't know almost anything about what I was doing. And so I was going to try to record an episode natively through the Anchor app. And I don't know what version of the app it was, but the app it started crashing like multiple times during the conversation. And so it was very stressful. And I remember wondering if it was my Wi-Fi and like literally driving around the neighborhood, trying to find different places to. So that first interview, I don't remember how long the episode was. It took something like an hour to complete, and it was in 6 different pieces. And my guest was extremely patient as she sort of reconnected and reconnected. It was like such a disaster and so stressful. But I knew that if I kept at it, that it would just continue to improve, right? That's the whole growth mindset and just this trajectory of growth that is inevitable I like to say that with repetition comes confidence and competence. And I tell my students that as well. And so, yeah, that's been a huge challenge for sure. And then you also asked about work-life balance. I think the best way I can answer that is just to say that we're not losing focus of what's really important in our lives. And so our families, our work, they need to come first. And one way I do that is just by trying to really carve out and protect certain times of the day and the week. So device-free dinners, family meeting before bed, we all shut our devices down at the same time, certain times on the weekends and that kind of thing. And by doing those practices and really protecting those windows, to me, it just makes sure that I'm keeping those connections strong and not neglecting the things that are really important. So outside of that, I love to get into the content. My wife is very patient and supportive and understanding. And fortunately, she's got her own university studies that she's into as well. So it's working for us right now to take those hours, and I'm doing the creating, she's doing the learning, and it works for us.
Oh, that's great. And I know that was a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a couple of months ago, I had posted something up, and we mentioned and we talked about our spouses. So I mean, that
So awesome.
support. I mean, it's just amazing, like you said. And I know, like you post some stuff up, and you show your family, and you have that family time, and that's wonderful. And but the same thing too is like having that support. Our wives really are a big cornerstone that we can lean on, and that's something that's very important. And I'm glad that your wife is she's coming along with that journey with you, just like my wife. She's coming along the journey, and it's just great that we have that support, because that's always very, very important. So that's cool. So big shout out to your wife, because she's awesome.
Right. Love you, Christine. And yeah, I always say number one sponsor of the podcast, right?
Yeah, exactly. They're the number one fans. They always see us through. And sometimes I'm done with the show, and then my wife will be like, "Hey, I was watching you. I was like, try doing this next time, and try doing this next time." And I love it. I love that she gives feedback, because I tell her it's like, hey, it's not just me. Like, we're in this together. We're a team, and we're all going along with that ride. And that's something that's very important. So yeah. So talking a little bit about that, Tim, and you mentioned something here. It's like you're kind of reflecting on where you'd like to see yourself in 5 years. So that's my next question for you. Where does Tim Cavey see himself in 5 years? And we'll break it down into professionally, and we'll break it down into maybe content creator, and maybe if you want to throw in anything else, maybe family. But let's see where Tim Cavey may see himself in 5 years.
Sure. So yeah, this is a great question. It's fun for me to answer. Our two boys are in high school. They will both be graduated within 5 years. And so that takes us into kind of a nice, exciting, interesting chapter of life. Not that we don't really enjoy every moment of parenting, but anyone with teenagers will know that, there's a transition there. So looking forward to a little bit more, I guess, just freedom and mobility when that time arrives. But in terms, on the professional side, I'll tell you this: I have a plan to retire actually in 2130, which is in 9 years, and would put me at about 51. So I don't know if that will actually work out, but I'm hoping that with some different, passive streams of income by that time, that's something I'll be able to do. In 5 years, definitely on the professional side, I would love to be an impact-making principal in some school. That would be a thrill for sure, and an honor. And, on the content creation side, I'd love to be an author by that time. I was hoping to write a book at some point through this year. We'll see. We'll see if that happens this summer. But to be an author and just to step up my content game, as I know you would like to as well, and continue to grow in this area. This whole business of what we do in terms of hosting these conversations, I really believe it's important work, and it gives me so much fire. So the nice thing is that even if the numbers aren't always what we want them to be right away, I still feel like it's going in a really positive direction that's affirming sort of who I am and my gifts and abilities and what I want to do with my life. So yeah, on the content side, I would love to just be that much more effective and more impacting in terms of who I'm reaching and the ideas that I'm able to share through Teachers on Fire. So
Perfect,
I hope
man.
that,
Well,
yeah.
Tim, I'm going to tell you something. I had no idea that you were already getting like close to retire, or like you were saying, like at retiring at 51, because I'm like, yeah, Tim and I were probably like, close to the same age. I actually thought, honestly, I thought you were a little younger than I was. I was just like,
Mm.
so I don't know, man. You're like looking sharp, man, looking sharp. So keep it up. But we've got some spouse love here. Omar, of course, he's always grateful for Feli as co-pilot for life. Amanda Macias too as well. And it's just amazing. These people, like Omar and Amanda, great creators too as well, great educators, and that's a commonality there too. When you have that spouse that can definitely help and support and be that number one fan, so that's great. So I love that. Now we talked a little bit about this time, and I know Tim, you and I, we kind of check up on each other, and we talk about numbers a little bit, and I think I loved what you said. That sometimes the numbers may not be there, as far as content we like to create, but it's always like, to me, I always think, I don't know. Here's my take. My take is, if we can at least have, at least if it's one bit of content that just helps spark one person and helps them change, their trajectory in a positive way, whether they become a creator or something. I mean, I think that works out really well. And I think I got that from Al Thomas, because at the very beginning, I was always like, oh, numbers, numbers. I was like, oh my goodness. And then you get imposter syndrome. You start measuring yourself with other people's rulers. And then it's like, but, that's not kind of the way that works. How do you battle that? Or what have been some of the battles that you've seen maybe going through that imposter syndrome? I mean, I'm sure that you maybe might have had that in the very beginning as you kind of started taking off and being more involved in the content creation. What were some of the things that you went through, maybe some vulnerabilities or insecurities?
For sure, for sure. Especially as I said earlier, starting as someone who didn't really have a great base. I didn't take a course, probably should have taken an online course from someone like Pat Flynn or John Lee Dumas about just how to set up this podcast thing. I just jumped in, and in some ways, no regrets, because just being in it, you sort of instantly start learning and getting better every week. And so in some ways, I don't really regret that start, even though if you listen to my first episodes, they sound terrible. But in terms of avoiding the numbers trap, I mean, a couple of things come to mind there. One is that, again, as we create, I said this earlier, but as we create consistently, confidence and competence will follow. Like, that is a guarantee. As you stick with what you're doing, as you continue to try to innovate and improve. So that will happen. And with that will come audience and impact. And it's not all about size of audience. We keep saying that. But on the other hand, that audience will grow if we're consistent. And so back when I was starting, I couldn't imagine 1,000 plays plus per episode. But 3 years later, that's where I am. And I'm very thankful for that. And so even though the growth hasn't been, what I would have loved, and I know that people at the top of our space have audiences much, much larger, I look back and I say, okay, I've actually grown consistently, and my impact and influence is slowly increasing, and my ideas are actually making a difference. Wow, some of the feedback we get, Fonz, from educators out there is so encouraging. So if you're a listener or consumer, if you see a creator working hard out there, just know that one note on Twitter or Instagram can make their day or even their week. It's so affirming and encouraging. So I know I'm making a difference, and I know the impact, like I said, is growing. And so even though it's not as always as fast or as huge, or sometimes we have little disappointments along the way, the overall trend is in the right direction. And that's what I take courage from. And I will say one more thing too, that tracking those stats, I'm a bit of a stats nerd. And so keeping an eye on those numbers, I know some creators really hate that, but for me, when I can look back, 1 year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that is so encouraging, because it reminds me, okay, I've actually achieved a few things here. I've actually grown along the way. And that's really, really affirming too.
Yeah. And like you said, it's just, yeah, I agree with everything that you just said. It's just when you just started creating, like very much like you, I just jumped in. I had no idea what I was doing, and I just said, hey, I just want people. But I knew that I just wanted to connect educators one show at a time. And now I've extended that to create, connecting educators and creators one show at a time. And so I've got, let me see, a couple of comments here that I wanted to share, like Amanda Macia saying, don't quantify your impact. And Omar Lopez here says, if you can impact one teacher, that's all it takes for a ripple to become a wave. And
Nice.
big shout out to Bonnie, who's joining us too as well. Thank you so much, Bonnie. Bonnie's also a great supporter. She's been a guest on the show. And so, like you said, it's just been great to love to spread. It says, I love the spread of the creator terminology. Yeah, there
Right.
you go. And, that's what we're here for. I mean, we really want to just create an impact. And I know our shows are very different. And that's, to be honest with you, and I share this, or maybe I haven't shared this much or only with certain people, but I know that my show I kind of came to terms maybe about 2 months ago, or maybe 3 months ago, when I said, okay, I was comparing myself to the Chris Nessies, the TMKVs, the Dan Kreines out there. But then I realized, I was like, well, my show's a little different because I don't know the pedagogical terminology and all that great stuff that is out there that a lot of people are talking to. And I always say, I got to embrace what I know. And because since I didn't go through a traditional college of education, coming out with a marketing degree, like I understand the personalized learning and of course with the practice that you get as far as being in the classroom for 11 years and now my current role. But then in my mind, it just kind of finally hit. It's like, hey, I'm more of a talk show. Like I'm more of just an interview. I just want to get to know people. And I just say, it may not be necessarily educational in that sense, but I have the educators here to just open up and just share their passions, because oftentimes they don't have that space to just really share what they're passionate about. They may be subject matter experts in one thing, but what really drives them? Like, hey, I want to know about your family. Hey, I want to know about hey, like Brian, who says, hey, I'm going to go fishing. And, we learned a lot about Brian. Even his parents said, we learned a lot of things about Brian that we didn't even know. So I guess that kind of helped me, kind of see like, hey, even though my numbers may be different, it's like I'm a slightly different kind of show, just kind of lingering in the education space, but just kind of a little bit different. So yeah, like you said, but it's just consistency and putting yourself out there, and of course having great guests such as yourself and are sharing your experience as well, because I definitely have learned a lot from you in the past year, and we continue to kind of push each other and to improve, and that's what it's all about, that connection, that collaboration, and that's been amazing, man.
Yeah, I was just listening to a podcast yesterday, Fonz, on my drive home. I think it's called the YouTube Creators Hub or something like that. And the guest was Dean Nimmin, who's one of these YouTube coaches. And he was just making the point that sometimes we feel like other voices are occupying a space when maybe they're not. And what I mean by that is there's always room. The internet is a huge, huge place. There are people, whoever we look up to as creators and listen to and watch on a regular basis, some of our colleagues have never heard of those people. And so there's always room for more voices, and no one does it like you. And I know you're a firm believer in that. And so I would just say to any educator out there, there's always room for more. You've got your own personality, your own take, your own perspective on things. And so come and join us. It's a big ocean.
Yeah, it really is. Just click record. And I mean, and watching Tim too, like Tim at work, when he does his podcast is amazing. And, what is great is I love doing this. Like, so right now, after we're done, I know you're going to finish, you're going to get on, and I'm here while doing my editing, but I've got you playing over here and I'm commenting and so on. And that's just been great. It really gets your morning started and everything. So that's been wonderful. So yeah, let's go ahead and maybe just talk a little bit more. I know we kind of transitioned a little bit out of that professional, but we talked here about podcasting and so on a little bit, content creation. But I guess maybe one of my big questions too is I know we talked a little bit about it backstage, but I know we're kind of going back to that professional. But what are some of the challenges that you may see, or as far as coming back, next year face to face, maybe on the tech side, maybe teachers coming back to their comfort zone and worksheets, what What do you think? What's going to happen?
Oh, I mean, you ask about challenges, and frankly, right now it all just feels positive and wonderful. The fact that we can come back without. So, to give you a little bit of context, my entire year was face to face. Teachers and students, of course, masked all day. We had to divide students into cohorts or learning groups that couldn't ever be together. So we weren't able to do assemblies. It was sort of a damper on field trips and a lot of our normal school events. So school life was really difficult. And it sounds like most of that will be done by the fall. So where I kind of look at it as hitting refresh or hitting reset on our education experience. Not that we're returning to the old normal. You see that a lot on Edu Twitter. I mean, we want to take a lot of the best things from this past year and from even what we learned during the lockdown and remote learning in the year before and apply them, of course, to this fall, right? But in terms of challenges that we faced this year, yeah, again, I just go to the upside of the huge opportunity cost of COVID. And what I mean by that is all of the energies that it pulled and directed toward figuring out life and learning during COVID. And now we can apply all of those energies back into professional learning and improving our practice. Here at my school, we are trying to get better at Seesaw and understand how we want to use Seesaw as a journal of learning artifacts for every learner, and that in coordination with Google Classroom. And then there are other tools that I would love to begin using. I'm hoping to bring in WeVideo into my own practice as I do some technology work here in our middle school. And so we've got a list of dreams and goals that we want to hit. And I guess it's just, to answer your question, it's just all about going into those goals strategically and thoughtfully and in ways that don't overwhelm teachers, really, and making sure they have enough supports and time to process what it is that we're doing and why we're doing it before we rush in. So overall, it's really, really positive, and it's just about being intentional along the way.
Excellent. And now, what is it that you see as being counterproductive in today's schools? And then how can we try, or maybe some thoughts on fixing it? Is there anything that you see, not necessarily in your school, but maybe right now overall? Like, is there something that you see as being counterproductive?
That you're stumping me here, Fonz, on that one. That is a good one. But I guess one idea that I've been wrestling with this week is the idea of too many tools or too many apps. Sometimes we come across that thought out there that we have to really narrow down the list of tools and resources. And you're such an ed tech guy. This is an ed tech show, so I would love to hear your thoughts on this. But I feel like here in 2021, we turn, you go to ISTE or any of these conferences, there are so many apps and tools. And I realize that I do recognize that there is a danger of overwhelming our constituents, our stakeholders with all of these different apps and tools. And I also recognize as an administrator and building leader that we want our teachers, for the most part, to be using the same sets or suites of tools, right? But on the other hand, I'm a creative, adventurous type. I'll freely admit that's my bias. And so if I watch My EdTech Life and I hear about Capwing or another great app or tool, like I want to try it out. I want to test it out and see what it can do for our learners. And so I'm not going to have those immediate concerns about, is this going to be too much for teachers or learners? I have faith in our students that, frankly, I think another app or tool energizes them for the most part. They're curious, like, hey, what's this? How does it work? What can I do? What can I create? How can this integrate with my learning? And so I have a lot of faith in students and in teachers in terms of adding more apps and tools to the arsenal, let's say. And I think that's just kind of the state of education, that we have all of these growing numbers of cloud-based tools and resources at our fingertips. So that's kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but I think this idea that we have to keep it to a tight list of 10 tools, I'm not totally on board with that. So, yeah.
Well, I think it's all about keeping it simple. I mean, at least I come from that viewpoint. Keep it simple. And maybe what it was is maybe at the beginning, I know for us, it was mainly just let's stick to these tools here because these are the ones that'll, at least get the teachers comfortable, because a lot of them came in really not using too much tech, fearing the tech. But then what I love that you said, it's all about the exploration. It's about having the teachers, like you said, having faith in teachers, of them looking out. They're taking the initiative to go and look for something that says, hey, this might work. And then they bring it in. Like you said, hey, kids, try this out. They try it out. There's success in that. And they're getting those learning artifacts. They are engaged. They're creating that learning experience. So I think like Patrick was on yesterday. Patrick Houseman was on, and he said, the tech that one should ditch is the tech that is really just substituting what you're doing. Like, so for example, like, I mean, if you're really just going to be using it just to annotate, I mean, you can do that on a piece of paper. That's great. I mean, if you want to do it on the computer, that's great. But it's just not really, you're just simply substituting. It goes back to the SAMR model. But if it's something that's going to redefine the learning, where it's going to allow you to do something that you wouldn't conceive that you could have ever done in your classroom, then that's the tech that you should promote. And so, yeah, there's going to be a lot of tools that are going to be out there. But like I said, I also believe in my teachers, and the teachers are definitely going to pick what is best. And sometimes it may look a little different than what, administrators push out, because they'll say, this is what needs to be done. It's like, okay, it's there, we're using it, but as long as the learning is taking place and the experience is there, I'm all for that.
Is it good for learning, and is it good for kids? That's really our filter, right? And if it's checking those two boxes, I think we need to take a good look at it, especially if it's free, right? Funds.
Yeah. Hey, I'm all about that. If it's free, it's for me. It's all good. Try it out, get a taste of it, and you might be surprised what may be out there. And, myself, I continually play around with stuff and finding things. And like you said, it really kind of like, whoa, like I like this. And imagine like our teachers too getting excited, the students getting excited. So that's why this year for our PD sessions that we've been doing in the summer, it's all more on content or creation tools, content creation, where the students can show their learning through, creating through, we're going to do oh my gosh, it just left my mind. The Adobe, we're going to be doing the Adobe Certified Educator. So we're going to be using Spark more. We're going to be doing those content creation tools where you've got video, you've got voice, you've got all that good stuff. And just to make the lessons more engaging. And of course, you get those learning artifacts. So that's something that is great. So we've got Amanda here, empowering teachers to empower learners, functional PLC time that is truly collaborative and teacher driven. Omar here. It's about giving choice. I love sharing new apps and allowing learners to select what works best for them. And he also says scaffolding and differentiate based on needs of your learners. So there you go. There's some good advice there from Omar, who's sharing some knowledge there from that middle school and tech examples also as well. So thank you, Omar. Thank you, Amanda, for your feedback there. But yeah, so I mean, like I said, I'm really excited for this next coming year. Everything is going to be new, fresh. It's going to be like a fresh start. So we'll see how that goes. And so, Tim, let's go ahead and I know that you've got a show coming up, and I want to give you some time to prep. So as we kind of wind down, I know we kind of sandwiched our conversation as far as your experience getting into education, your content creation, and how we kind of went back just a little bit as to where you may see, or the state of education right now, something that may be counterproductive. But let's have a little bit of fun here and with these last couple of questions. All right. So my question here is, if you can have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Wow. So many things rush through my mind, but it would be something about just get out there and start. I just posted something about this from James Clear, and it was a quote to the effect that you don't need a better laptop to become a writer. You don't need a better camera to become a photographer, and on and on. So I think Chris Nesi likes to say, just get out there and create, or something like that. And so that would be my billboard. I think the world is better if you add your voice and your contributions to it. So
there you go. That's pretty good. Yeah, I think like Chris Nesi just said, like, just click record, just do it. That's pretty much kind of like what he says there. So that's a great answer there, man. And then of course, here we go to kind of wrap it up here. It says, if you and I would switch roles and you were the host and I was the guest, what is one thing that you would like to ask me?
Wow. That's also a fun one. I've seen you do different twists on this question, so this one caught me a little off guard. But what would be your next level? Tell me about one of your aspirations in terms of the podcast and the streaming show. How would you like to take your work to the next level? Because I will be taking notes on your answer to that question.
Well, actually, taking this to the next level, it's probably like I talked a little bit to you prior backstage, is probably just doing a set redesign for sure. Just kind of doing that and kind of bringing a fresh look to it. As far as the content is still, this is my passion. It's still going to stay the same, where I just want to know the heart of all the educators, know the heart and the passions of those people that I get to interview, that I learn from, that I look up to really still get to know them at that personal level and that people can connect. But as far as that is just to continue, like you said, being consistent with the content, stepping that up with the set redesign. And I don't know, like my aspiration would be is if I can do this full time, I would love to do this full time. But currently, that's not available yet. We never see what might happen there in the future. But for now, like I said, it's just small steps, but consistent and continually moving forward. So that's what I got there. And I think you're doing like a great job with that too, where each time you're stepping up your game, the production, we learn from one another. And I think that's one of the things that I want to say openly is that I really appreciate what you're doing and what you've helped me do, and also with the feedback that you give myself, and then that I get to give you feedback, and we're continually growing. And I've really liked our that collaborative aspect that we both have, as we are in the same education space, but we're here and there's space for everybody. And so thank you, Tim, for what you're doing and the amazing work with the amazing guests that you have that really blow my mind, especially like Todd Whitaker. Oh man, that guy last week, loved it. So just keep doing what you're doing, Tim. I'm really happy for you, my friend. Now, I know I did put in some links in here where people can connect with you. Anything else, any other projects that you're working on, anything else that you'd love to share with our audience?
Nothing especially. I'm just looking forward to getting back to creating content this summer. But yeah, people can connect with me at Teachers on Fire. No underscores, no symbols, no numbers. At Teachers on Fire on virtually any social media platform out there. If you find one where I am not there, let me know.
Hey, are you on Twitch too now?
Yes, I am on Twitch. I followed you there on Twitch. So yeah. I mean, you and I talked a little bit, I think, off air at one point. Twitch is sort of a weird landscape. I don't know what to make of it. I don't think there are really a lot of educators there, but this platform that we use to broadcast allows us to broadcast on Twitch. So why not?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I've been doing. Just take advantage and just put it anywhere, and you never know who's going to stumble upon that. And the other one I recommend you try out, Tim, I know we're running short. I'm going to end it with this, but try out Lula TV, man. Like, I love it because I can stream live onto Instagram. The only thing is like I can't bring on anybody on there. So, that's the only downside. But I'm looking forward to our Instagram chats, my friend. I seriously am.
That's going to be fun. Yeah, watch for us on Instagram Live. Fonz and I will be chatting once a week through the summer, I think. So can't wait.
Yeah, excited about that. Well, Tim, thank you again so much, sincerely from the bottom of my heart, just for being one of those podcasters in the education space that was very welcoming right from the beginning, being able to connect, inviting me to the podcaster roundtable, and allowing me to connect with other wonderful educators, podcasters. And it really means a lot because we definitely need more people like you with your heart, that passion for what you do, and being a great connector. So again, from the bottom of my heart and in front of the world right now, thank you for what you've done for our show, because again, the more that I learn, the better we get. And I appreciate all your feedback. So ladies and gentlemen, this was Tim Cavey, a great friend. Follow him on all social media at Teachers on Fire. Again, great content creator. Look out for his blogs. Look out for Instagram lives that he does. Look out for anything that he does. He's just a wonderful person, very genuine, very authentic, and reach out to him. I know he's very accessible and approachable, and he'll definitely help either with anything you may have or steer you in the right direction. And just make sure you follow his show. And my friends, thank you again so much, as always, for making my EdTech life what it is today. As I keep saying, if it isn't for what you guys give us as far as feedback, we wouldn't be here and continually doing what we do, because we believe in it. This is our passion project. This is our heart. So we're giving you our all in everything that we do, guys. So stay tuned. We're going to be taking a break this coming week. I'm on vacation, but we will be back July the 8th. That's on a Thursday, but we will be back July the 8th, and we're already scheduling for July and August. So again, if you're interested on being a guest, go to myedtech.live, fill out the contact us. Let us know what your story is. Let us know what you love to share. And then that way we can go ahead and make it happen. So thank you all, my friends. I appreciate Omar. I appreciate Bonnie. Thank you so much, Amanda and Mel and everybody else that joined us this morning. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. And until next time, stay techie, my friends.